gums at each other any chance they get. The fight clock is brought to you by Modelo.
It's time
for you to sit back, relax, and listen to a complete and fucking utter armchair expert give his completely and utterly useless opinions on the one hell of an amazing sport that is MMA.
Alright, this is take 4 of this podcast because I recorded a whole podcast with my computer mic, so it sounded like absolute and utter garbage. But g'day, guys. Apologies for the delay in the podcast. Just didn't have time to get one out last week with everything I had going on. But I'm going to endeavour to get a post-fight card review of UFC 288 from New York, New Jersey in the Prudential Center out, which of course included the highly anticipated title fight and the return of Henry Cejudo after 3 years. He was fighting Aljamein Sterling for the title that he won off Petr Yan from an illegal knee. I'm just going to get into it, to be honest, because I'm really just not in the mood. I was meant to be editing this podcast, and now I'm recording the whole thing again. So, Gilbert Burns steps up on short notice to fight Belal Muhammad, and is basically a one-arm man by the end of round 1, and lost the fight. They went the distance. Shout out to Gilbert for getting in there, I gotta say. But it just didn't go his way that night, and you would think Belal Muhammad is now next in line for the title after Colby, who even knows what's going on with that, because it was supposed to be apparently International Fight Week, but that hasn't been announced. So that would lead me to believe that there's probably been some sort of stablemate, because Leon has said publicly that he wants to fight Belal because he believes Belal deserves it more. But Dana said, no, you're fighting Colby because Dana wants those numbers, basically. So now it's, looking like Belal's next in line whenever. But of course, we get to the main event of the evening, and Aljo does what he always does. Stalls, keeps him up against the cage, keeps him on the ground. Henry won. Like, a lot of people think Henry might have won. I think he probably won maybe rounds 1 and 5. They were the ones I had him winning. He got big takedowns in both those rounds. They were the rounds I think he won, but in the end, he just didn't win enough and left without the title. But props to him for coming back after 3 years, and if he decides that this is his last fight, then I hope he goes back into coaching, because he seems to know a lot of what he's doing in that aspect. He may be the king of cringe, but, to beat Mighty Mouse twice, you got to know what you're doing there. Ladies and gentlemen, that was UFC 288, and now we go into UFC 289. Nunes versus Pena 3, which I'm excited for, and then UFC 290, which is one of the topics I want to talk about before this podcast is over, because that card is just looking juicier and juicier by the second. Sorry about the length. This podcast is probably going to be under 10 minutes. I'm just going to tell you right now. I'm just really not in the mood at this point. I was supposed to be mixing and mastering this podcast by now, but I am now re-recording the whole thing again because the first one sounded like I'd recorded it in my toilet. So I have to be making sure it sounds as professional as I can get it, even though I'm currently laying on my bed with my laptop recording this. But yeah, going to take a break, and when we come back, I'll talk about a few things before I end the podcast off. So as I said, there's two things I want to talk about before this podcast ends abruptly. One of them, of course, is UFC 290, as I mentioned, which is looking very, very stacked. Of course, with the announcement that from Dana a few days ago that Alexander Volkanovski, the 145-pound champion, is going to be fighting the interim champion, Yair Rodriguez. Because, of course, on that stacked Perth card, UFC 284, Rodriguez won the interim belt and called out Volk because he was fighting on the same card. Fighting Islam, obviously. And yeah, now they're going to scrap, and we'll see who the real 145 champion is out of those two. Very keen for that. But of course, that is not all, ladies and gentlemen, because Robert the Reaper Whittaker is fighting Duplessis, seemingly for the next shot at Izzy, who obviously just won his championship back a few months ago. It feels like a few months ago now, but we've had a bunch of cards, in the middle of months. It's weird. Or towards the end of them. Like, we've had two cards in the same month this year. It's very weird. It's normally one a month, but, anyway. But, of course, Robert, sorry, I got sidetracked. Yeah, Whittaker is fighting Duplessis, seemingly for whoever can get the shot at Izzy next. And if Rob wins, you would think it's going to be Izzy Rob 3, which is interesting because the first episode of this podcast was talking about Izzy Rob 2, so now we're going to have an episode talking about Izzy Rob 3, potentially. But Dana has said that if that fight happens, they are targeting Sydney for it, which is going to be very interesting. If that happens, I'm going to try and go to that card because that's going to be not miss. I think that is definitely going to be not miss. Whoever wins, I think. But that is not all, ladies and gentlemen. UFC 290 in the National Fight Week from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, is the gift that just keeps on giving, because guess what? I talked about Izzy. Well, his teammate, Dan Hooker, is also going to be on the card. So, ladies and gentlemen, UFC 290 is going to be abso-friggin-lutely not miss. It's just a shame that we might not be able to get Leon and Colby, and that we can't get Izzy and Dan Hooker on the same card. Dan the Hangman Hooker is just a shame. I mean they have been on the same cards before, but be nice to have them on again. Izzy's not getting any younger. Be good to create those moments. But Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully this is my last attempt at recording this podcast, and I can now go and add some compression, a bit of EQ, a bit of mix and master, and get this thing out by 6 a.m. It's currently 1:01, and I've got 5 hours to do it. Well, hopefully not 5 hours. Hopefully I can go to bed at some point after I've uploaded it all. But, it might take me about an hour or so, and hopefully I'll be in bed by 2 or 2:30. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the fight last week. And, I'll see you guys whenever. Probably before or after UFC 289 when Julianna Pena versus Amanda Nunes 3 happens, which I'm also very keen for. Anyway, guys, till next time, catches.